Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, welcome to this episode. And today we're going to dive deep into the different types of retirement and how you know when you are eligible to retire. Now, let me make one big clarification right here at the beginning. When I'm talking about when you're eligible to retire, that doesn't mean that's when you should retire. Sometimes it is, but often it's not. Sometimes people should even retire before they're quote-unquote eligible. And we'll dive into some of those reasons later. But also sometimes people should keep working after they're quote-unquote eligible for the first time to really maximize their benefits. It depends on your situation. But today, as you see, I'm going to share my screen. So if you're on the podcast, you definitely want to check out the YouTube channel on this one because I have a beautiful flow chart going through all the different types of retirement because there's lots of different things, nuances with every type of retirement, and I want to make sure you understand it. So visuals always make a big difference there. So we're going to dive right in. Really, now, okay, one more clarification. We have to do it. Is if you're a special provisions federal employee, that is law enforcement, air traffic controllers, you know who you are, firefighters. You folks, do you know the rules are different for you? And I'm actually going to do a future video for you guys. There's going to be another flow chart for you. And actually for you, it's a lot simpler. But let me actually say this one thing about special provisions. If you don't have enough special provision time to retire under special provisions, then you're going to default back into the regular traditional FERS rules, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So keep that in mind. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the fun stuff. So this is the scoop. There's really three criteria you have to meet to quote-unquote retire with an immediate retirement or a voluntary retirement, which is normally the type of retirement that federal employees are trying to go for. And that is because when you are eligible for that type of retirement, first, your pension does not get reduced at all. There's no deductions to it, and you can get it right away, and you can often keep things like health insurance, life insurance, etc. So there's big reasons. So what are the criteria? And we see it here across the top. Number one, have you reached your minimum retirement age with at least 30 years of service? That's number one. Now, you just have to meet one of these criteria, not all three, just one of them, okay? So again, your MRA plus 30 years or age 60 with 20 years of service. Now, let me take one step back. Your MRA, if you don't know, it's based on your birthday. For most of you, it's going to be between the age of 56 and 57. If you're on the younger side, it's going to be 57. Okay. Again, age 60 with at least 20 years or age 62 with at least 5. Now, if you meet any of that criteria, you can, of course, get an immediate retirement, which is awesome. If you don't, we're going to go over the other options in just a second here. Okay, so assuming, yes, hey, you are eligible for one of those criteria, perfect. You're eligible for an immediate retirement, which is awesome. Now, what's the next question? The next question, hey, have you already reached age 62 with at least 20 years of service? If so, what are one of the huge benefits is you get a 10% bonus to your pension. Now, if someone's 57 and planning on retiring, is it worth another 5 years of their life just to get this 10% bonus? Well, not all the time, but often if you don't know about this bonus and you're 61 in 6 months or whatever, and you're close, hey, you might as well squeak it out and get a big bump, big increase to your pension just by waiting the little extra. Now, if you don't have, let's say, if you're not 62, you don't have 20 years yet, you can still, as long as you're eligible for an immediate retirement like we've been talking about, you could still be eligible to get all those benefits. You just don't get this 10% bonus. So it's a bummer, but not the end of the world. Okay, so I'm going to move up here. Let's now talk to those folks that, okay, you're not eligible for an immediate retirement, so you don't hit one of the criteria across the top. You haven't reached your MRA plus 30 years. You haven't reached age 60 with 20 years or age 62 with 5. You haven't reached any of those. You say, okay, what types of retirement can I qualify for? Great, let's dive in. So then the next question is, hey, have you reached your MRA with at least 10 years? So the bar comes down just a little bit. You got to reach your MRA. And what does MRA stand for? We got to remember minimum retirement age. So for many federal employees, that is going to be the minimum age they can retire and really get a pension right away. And there's lots of different criteria and things that come along with your quote-unquote minimum retirement age. And we'll go over some of those things too. So if you have, great. That means you can actually get a pension right away. If you have hit your MRA with 10 years and you don't quite have 30, right? Between 10 and 30, you can get a pension right away. However, there's one big drawback. And that is right here. Basically, you get a 5% reduction to your pension for every year you retire before age 62. So what does that look like? Well, what if you're 57, you've got 10 years of service, you say, hey, I'm done, I want to retire. You can do it. You can get a pension right away. However, because you're 57, that's a 25% reduction because that's 5% for the 5 years before your age 62. So that's 25% total that you get a hit on your pension. Now, sometimes it's still worth it depending on the situation, but certainly for some people, they really don't want to take that hit. So keep that in mind. Now what's the next question? Okay, the next question is, are you okay if you are, again, you have hit your MRA, you've got at least 10 years, but not quite 30, so you could retire right away and take a hit on your pension, or if you're okay delaying your pension, then what you can do is what they call a postponed retirement. Basically, what this means is, let's say, again, you're 57 with 10 years in this example. What you can do is you still leave. You still stop working at 57, and you could do what they call a postponed retirement. And basically, the summary of that is you don't take your pension right away, so you stop working, but your pension doesn't start till 62. Now, if you have more years of service, it could start earlier, depending on how many years of service and stuff like that. Now, before I dive any deeper on that, if you have any specific questions about immediate retirement or postponed retirement or MRA Plus 10 retirement or deferred retirement, any of the types of retirement I talk about today, if you go in the description below, if you go onto my website, or if you just Google Haas Federal Advisors Deferred Retirement or Haas Federal Advisors Postponed, it'll pop right up. Google is really good at finding all our articles, which is great. And so if you just put Haas Federal Advisors and then the topic, there's going to be tons of resources for you to check out. So definitely check that out. Okay, but again, postponed retirement, basically what that looks like is you're eligible for an MRA Plus 10 retirement. You don't want to get the 5% reduction to your pension for every year before 62. So you postpone your pension until 62, depending on how many years you have. And that reduction goes away. But of course, there may be a gap between when you stop working and when your pension starts. So you want to keep that in mind as you're planning. Maybe you take another job, whatever it is. Maybe you want to be a contractor, whatever it is. There's lots of different reasons to check this out. So definitely food for thought. So let's hop back up here though. What if we answered no? What if you haven't hit your MRA yet, or you don't quite have 10 years, right? What if you're not quite eligible for what they call an MRA Plus 10 retirement? What do you do then? Now, this is very common, especially for those that started with the government very early. Maybe you've got 30 years of service, but you haven't hit your MRA yet, your minimum retirement age. What is there for you? Is there anything available for you before you hit your MRA? So let's dive right in. The first question is, do you have at least 5 years of service? And if you have at least 5 years of service, you can be eligible for what they call a deferred retirement. Now, what a deferred retirement is basically you just leaving the government and then you turning on a pension later. Now, that is very different from a postponed retirement that I was just mentioning a few minutes ago. It's different. There's different rules and different benefits that come along with both. So definitely as you search and you look, let's say on our website or whoever's website, you want to make sure you understand the difference between deferred and postponed. There's big differences, so definitely check that out. So as long as you got at least 5 years of service, you're eligible for a pension, which is great. However, of course, the fewer years of service you have, the smaller your pension is going to be, obviously, right? So keep that in mind. So let's say you're age 40, you've got 20 years of service, and you say, I'm not going to make it till my MRA. I don't want to work that long with the government. Great. Well, you can take a deferred retirement. You can get a pension later. Basically, a deferred retirement is saying, I'm going to leave the government now, and then later, at a later age, normally your MRA or age 60, 62, right in there, depending on how many years of service you have, is when you can start a deferred retirement and get that going. Now, one big downside, of course, of a deferred retirement is you cannot keep your health insurance into retirement or even when you turn on your deferred retirement later. So those are the pros and cons. Now, again, the 4 big types of retirement we talked about today was immediate retirement, which is the full-blown thing. Next is MRA Plus 10 retirement. Next, postponed retirement. And lastly, deferred retirement. And they all have different rules and nuances. And if you want to dive deep into one of those that applies to you, again, I've got deep articles and videos on each one of those so you can understand what makes sense for you. Now, again, if you're a special provisions employee, I got some stuff coming out for you on your flow chart on how it works for you and your retirement system, so stay tuned for that. So if you're a federal employee and you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube, please subscribe. It really helps us out here, and it tells us, wow, people are enjoying the content, and it incentivizes us to keep making things, and everything you guys do is very much appreciated. Thanks for being a part of this incredible community, and have a great day.